Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Zander Sprague.
Hello, Epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Zander Sprague, and today I am so honored to be joined by Kim Rahir. Kim, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm a 61-year-old mother of three. I coach women who are in what we call midlife to become strong, muscular, happy, and healthy. I also lift weights competitively, and I started that at the tender age of 55. And I used to be a journalist. I do what I do today because I went through some life-changing experiences with illness, and fear, anxiety, and decided that I wanted to do something with my life that would be impactful.
Well, that is great, and yes, from reading your bio and stuff, it sounds like you've been on a few epic journeys, and if you don't mind, let's explore for a moment that sort of transition from not being well to here you are lifting competitively, starting that at a time where lots of people aren't starting lots of new things, or if they are, it's not nearly as intense. So I'm interested to know.
It's a great question. Um, because I remember this moment, like when everything happened. I had like a long autoimmune disease journey. At some point, I was then diagnosed with MS and told that I would need long treatment, and that I was supposed to be careful with exercise. And I decided I wanted to be physically strong. I was not going to give up.
Sure.
And this transition, I don't know where exactly I could place it. I think the one thing that I can put my finger on is because this diagnosis was so scary. And when you think about what's going to happen in the future, you have no idea. When you have MS, your future is a big question mark. You could be in a wheelchair. Some doctors told me I could go blind, which I didn't really need to learn, but they told me anyway. So there's only one thing that you can really do if you want to stay sort of sane and not live your life in fear, which is focus on the moment, focus on today. And that's what I did. I learned mindfulness techniques and everything just to be very present with what I could do on the day. And that was, there was like no grandiose motivation, like something, be present. And now in mindfulness, they're great words. But for me, it was like really self-defense, because if I started thinking about the future, I was just going to scare myself out of my wits. So that's what I did. And I think this is what sort of helped me to do things. Because when you focus on today, you're not going to be lost in thought, what am I going to do tomorrow or anything. You just say, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I felt this desire to become physically strong, because I had been in the hospital too, paralyzed from the hip downwards. I had experienced like perfect, complete physical weakness where I had no power at all.
Sure.
And so I decided that I was going to train, and I did what I could in the day. And I think this is something about a transition, because now I help women also transition from a state of being discouraged or weak or overweight or whatever it is to something else. And the transition, we always imagine that it's like we wake up one day and we say, I have this epiphany. I'm going to be a different person. I'm going to do all these things. When I'm convinced now that in reality, it's just exactly like your podcast says, it's just one step that I take today. That's how transitions occur. And often it's in hindsight that you say, oh, I have changed so much. But on the day, it's just the next small step that you take.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that you were a mom, and I'm a father myself, and um, I remember when my daughters were babies. Like I was aware that that first year there's so much incredible change that happens. And every day I tried so hard to focus in on what's new, what's changing. But they are little imperceptible things. But then you, as you say, you look back and go, wow, in the last month, my baby learned how, learned to roll over, can hold its head up, and you're absolutely right. When we're on these epic journeys, a lot of them are long, and the change is not something you notice until you look back and realize that look, now I'm able to do this thing that before seemed impossible, be it bench press, I don't know, 75 kilos, or
Wow. Yes.
and I don't know metric that well, so I'm like, I was trying to come up, I was going to say pounds, but I know you're in Europe and the rest of the world does not use the imperial system, so I was like, okay. Or I ran some marathons, and I remember when I started, I thought, how will I ever run, 8 miles or something? And then as I was doing my training, it was day by day. I was just doing it, doing what I had to do that day. And then I heard myself saying one time, "Oh yeah, we only have an 8 mile run today." Whereas before 8 mile, like it was
So, yes,
just
absolutely.
like, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think so many people are on these much longer epic journeys, and you're not aware of the change that's actually happening because it is sort of imperceptible. I have to imagine with weightlifting, it's not like all of a sudden you're lifting some huge amount of weight. It's just every day you're working, you find that now you're able to lift a little more.
Yeah,
And you
that's
look
how it
back and all
works.
of a sudden go, look at that. When I started, I could do this, and now I can do, that's not even, that's a warm up. That used to be my whole workout, and now that's like, oh, I'm just warming my muscles up. So
Yeah, it's something that we have to remind ourselves all the time to always measure backwards because we have great goals, we have places we want to go, we want to be there, we want to be this, we want to achieve that. Um, and then we don't stop often enough to look back and see how far we've come. I'm tempted today to say, oh my God, I'm still not doing this in my lifting. And as you said, if you look back where you started, it's a long way. It's the same when you change your lifestyle, when you want to eat better, when you work out more, and you think, oh, I'm still not getting 10K steps every day, but maybe I'm getting 5K and I used to walk like zero. So
right,
looking back and really celebrating how far we've come, it's not something that we do naturally. We always have this striving approach. We want to move forward and look at where we're going. And looking back sometimes is really it's encouraging, it's empowering. And I myself, until like a year or two ago, I wasn't even aware that my story is quite epic. That I was actually,
it is epic.
yeah,
And I think um with any adversity that we may find in our life, mindset is so important. Um when you have a chronic illness, or you find yourself being diagnosed with something. I am such a firm believer that what we tell ourselves about our own healing journey is so very important. Um, I crashed on my mountain bike 2 years ago, busted my shoulder up pretty good. But the whole time I'm like, I'm gonna be fine. I'm going to get back. I will get back on my bike. And I haven't gone down the same trail I went down, but but I'm not
good
afraid.
choice.
I'm not afraid to get on the bike. And I'm like, it's just, here's where I am. I can't change the fact that I broke my shoulder. I can lament that I'm not happy that it happened, but it did. The same way that when you had a diagnosis of MS,
Yeah.
you kind of have two
And
choices. You can pull the blanket over your head and say, "Woe is me," but the fact of the matter is, your life is going on, whether you participate in it today or not.
yeah.
And your MS isn't miraculously going away because you ignore it.
Yeah, that's the thing. And this situation taught me something really crucial that I'm happy I learned, and I'm using it every single day, even in the tiniest of situations. There's absolutely no point in asking yourself, why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? Or who's to blame? What happened exactly? At what point in time did I make a mistake, or did someone make a mistake? All these questions, they are totally useless. There's always only ever one question that you want to ask yourself, which is, what can I do now? Like, the
Yeah.
situation is what it is. You can question it as much as you like. It will not take you anywhere. It will not change anything. If you ask, what can I do now? You're going to do something. And it could be the smallest of things. It doesn't matter. But as soon as you're doing something, you feel empowered and you feel like you're, acting. You're a human being that is doing stuff instead of pondering and, as you said, lamenting and thinking why it shouldn't be like this. It's also a big one. We always have this idea of how it should be. And when life doesn't live up to that, we get very disappointed and think, oh no, this is not good. This is not what I wanted. This is not what I thought. Of course, this was not what I wanted for myself. I had no sort of specific plans for my life, but I definitely didn't have any plans of being an MS patient. And I just did what I could. And when you talk about the mindset, this is also where I think the lifting is a bit of a um, silver bullet, because it gets you physically better and stronger, but it works wonders on your mental health. It gives you so much confidence and the experience in your bones and your fibers that you can overcome resistance, like literally, because that's what you do when you lift.
Yeah.
And that's where you can actually, with this physical action or doing resistance training, you can actually also train your mind and your mindset. So you don't have to wait for this epiphany one morning and say, oh, I'm going to become a weightlifter. You can just start lifting and then you will be one.
Well, yeah, and I agree with all of that. I try and remind people that there are things that we do every, every day and we don't think about it, but there was a time where we couldn't. Learning to write. If you remember back to kindergarten or first grade when you first started learning your letters, I mean, it was really challenging to make an A, make a B, all of that. And now there's I mean, you don't think about how do I form an A, how do I form a B,
So
all of that. Um, and you look back and think, yes, there was a time where it was a struggle for me to write, and now it's not. There was a time that it was challenging to read, and now I read all the time and stuff. So yeah, I totally agree. And I think um you were talking earlier about, looking back to see what you have accomplished. Um in my book, I have this idea I call the 97-3 rule, which is that 97% of our day is actually really good and up to 3% isn't so good. Yes, we have the days where you know, it's a bad day and it's more than 3%. But in general, it's a good day. And yet we focus on the things that didn't go right in our day and completely ignore all of these fabulous things. Kim, you woke up this morning.
yeah,
You
no,
had and but
what a
it's
gift.
but I'm not trying to trivialize it. People laugh when I said that, but I'm like, we started off by waking up.
Yeah,
That's a really good thing.
yeah,
Um, you got out of bed. You had your day. I think the other thing that people forget, or depending on what they're doing. So if you start on weightlifting, you understand that there's a journey that you're on, and it's going to take you time to build muscle to be able to lift more, etc. And yet on so many other parts of our life, you said, oh, um, here's the way it's going. Here's the way it could be ideally. Why didn't this come easily? Why didn't it? And yet, the things that we achieve because it took time, because we practiced, because we did, right? It's so I'm interested for you. You said that you do weightlifting competitions. So you made that decision. Hey, I want some goal to get towards, right? Nothing like some kind of a event or competition to help motivate you to say on the days where you don't feel so good about going to the gym, hey, I got to go to the gym because I have this event. So when did you do your first event?
Um, that was I think it was in March 2019.
Cool.
So I had been doing, what you described, bench pressing and stuff like this, which we call powerlifting,
Yeah, powerlifting.
um,
Okay.
for years. And then a personal trainer I was working with asked me if I wanted to try Olympic weightlifting, which is different. Olympic weightlifting is just two moves. You have to put the bar overhead from the floor overhead in one move in the snatch and then in two moves in the clean and jerk. So I
Yeah.
tried it. Um, it's extremely difficult. It's so complicated. It's not only physical, it's also physics. You have to outsmart gravity, but I loved it. And this is lifelong learning at its core. You never make the same lift twice. There's
No.
always something different. And I loved it so much and I found it so challenging and exciting that I switched gyms and I joined a pure weightlifting gym. And after 2 weeks, they said, "Hey, great that you joined us. Do you want to compete?" And I said, "What?" No, I was 55. And they said, "Yeah, everybody's competing here." So, and then I said, "Okay, fine." And it's, especially for a woman my age, it's the best thing you can do because it's very challenging. It is scary. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. It is everything that makes you feel alive. And the very first competition I did was a local meet, and we started, and I had such strong emotions all over the place, like everything that I just described. And they had nowhere to go. And I told my coach, "Listen, I think I'm going to cry. I'm not unhappy, but it has to go somewhere. It's
Yeah.
like so strong." He said, "No, don't cry. Don't cry now because that's going to relax you. We don't want you relaxed until
Right.
you've done your lift." So and it's challenging because, you know, the light is on, they call your name, and then you have to step out there and you have 1 minute to make the lift. You cannot go and say, "Oh, last week I lifted this, or next week I might be able to
No,
lift that."
it's
No,
but you could do right
now.
now.
Yes, absolutely. So you also learn how to fail because you cannot make every lift. You fail lifts and then you need to reset and go out for the next one, not thinking about what we talked about before. What went wrong? Why did this happen? Or, you just have to reset and start from scratch and say, "I'm just going to do this again." And this is one of the most um, rewarding situations, or this is actually the competitions I'm most proud of, is when you get 3 attempts in every lift and you fail the first two and you have just one left in your third attempt to put points on the board.
Right.
So if you go get thinking, "Oh my God, what happened? Why did this not work? What's happened if I don't make," you're lost. You have to focus, reset. And I talked to a lady recently who said, "Oh, this is mindfulness on steroids because you really have to block out everything and just focus on this one." And that helps you in all parts of your life if you develop those skills, of resetting, of focusing, of accepting failures, and then of course it makes you physically strong too.
Right. Well, and failure is part of the journey. Okay. We don't get, no one gets it 100% right. And we do learn from it. I know from competing in sports most of my life, there were times where I won or my team won, and there were times that we didn't, and there were heartbreaking losses, but all of that does honestly make us better people. We learn how not to do it. I'm sure you've been in training and in competition. Maybe you go into competition in a weight that just last week was no problem. You get into the competition and that first try, you don't pull it off, and then you think, Kim, what's up? Like, well, like, come on, you did that last week. It was no big deal. You should be able to, snatch that with no problem. And there are so many factors that go into it.
Yes, there are.
So here's, I always love to ask this question to people who are doing, like competitions and stuff. So when you got done your first event, how did you feel?
I was on cloud nine. I was like, I wasn't even touching the floor. It was also because I got 6 out of 6, which is like super exceptional.
Sure.
Um, and I was just thriving on adrenaline, on endorphins. I just felt fantastic.
Absolutely. Did you have a moment like, I mean, that's awesome, you're doing it, but let's say, I don't know, an hour or two later, I know I finished my first marathon. I was so excited. I dreamed about this, and I was on cloud nine. I had the endorphins. But I had what I call the now what, right? Like, I had worked so hard to get there. I accomplished it. I was incredibly excited about that. But now what? Like,
Yeah.
I worked so hard. I accomplished this. I'm so excited. But now what? So I'm going to guess that your now what was, well, I should enter another competition.
On to the next.
On to the next.
Absolutely. Which is great because that it gives some structure to this really natural fluctuation that we have. And I always insist. Yes, I was on cloud nine and I was very happy, but
Sure.
I try to keep my highs low because that will help me keep my lows higher. The higher you rise, the lower you crash afterwards. Physically, you can tell that right away because when you have a competition, a big competition, you have such an adrenaline rush that the next day I just want to eat sugar. My system is sort of going, come on, let's calm this whole system down here with some sugar. So yes, I want to be happy and I enjoy this, but I'm not looking for this even better or stronger kick or thrill or something like this. I'm happy with my highs. And I don't keep them like low deliberately. It's just I'm not striving to sort of get higher and higher and higher. I'm just happy to
Absolutely.
do what I can. And then if you can just sign up for the next competition, it gives structure to this sort of high, to this amplitude. You're very happy on that day. The next day, you're maybe a bit tired. You want to have some sugar. You think, what now? What next? And you then set your eyes on the next competition, which will be like, months out. So you know that you have to rebuild very gently. So you don't go crazy. You stay in your routine. You enjoy the emotions that you get from this. But it's structured and it's
And
sort of manageable.
structure is, I talk about it all the time. That structure is so important, and it it makes what you're trying to achieve so much doable. I mean, it makes it doable. I had a training schedule for my marathon, and I set training schedules for, I ride road bikes now. So if I were training for a century or something like that, I'm like, let me set a schedule, because then I don't have to think about it. I go and I look
Yes.
and it says do this. I'm sure with your powerlifting, you have a schedule. You know that you're doing arms this day, legs another day. That you know what your workout is, and it actually makes it much easier because you don't have to think about it. Okay, here's the workout I'm doing today.
Yeah, it's crucial. It's really important, and this is something I also work on with my clients when we build the routines and the systems to start training regularly, to start eating better. you need to take a lot of decision making out of the whole thing. Some things must just be said in advance. You don't have to worry. You don't have to negotiate in your head, because this is also something that happens, right? When you don't have a structure in place, then you're sort of left to your own devices, and then your head starts a negotiation. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I maybe not do it? And that's a big waste of time, I think, and energy too. And it doesn't really help you move forward. When you can set some structures and systems in advance, makes it easier for you. You don't have to worry. You don't have to think. And then when you work with a professional, and I have a professional coach in weightlifting, he knows what he does. It's all written out. There's like microcycles, mesocycles, macrocycles, all this stuff. You can just focus on the lifting. You don't have to worry and think about anything. And you can create that for yourself in other parts of your life too. Put it structures and system, and stop the negotiation and the thinking and the worrying.
Absolutely. Now, one final thing I love to ask my guests about is, I write about the concept of these two powerful words, not yet. I think not yet is so wonderful. It's so optimistic. When I was writing my books, has your book come out? Not yet. It doesn't mean it's not coming out. It just means I haven't achieved it. Have you had, Kim, have you had your competition? Not yet, because it's not until 2 months from now. Awesome, right? I mean, no one, okay, yes, it's coming up in 2 months. So for you, what are one or two of your not yets?
Well, one is I would love to be able to snatch 40 kilos,
Wow.
which is about 4 kilos above what I'm able to do right now. And that's definitely a not yet. And I would also like to be that. I see these guys, mostly guys, but it's going to change over the years because more women get into weightlifting. I see like close to 90-year-old guys showing up for competitions. And they travel the world. They stay at a hotel or a hostel. They go to the weigh-in because, you get weighed before.
Right.
They carry their breakfast. They step on the platform. Sometimes they even have trouble walking, but they go there and they lift. And I want to be that person.
That's awesome, Kim.
Not yet, but I hope it's going to happen.
There you go. Well, I think, as you said, exercise is key, and you seem to be well on your way.
Yes, that's one thing that really it's simple, and it helps you, just stay focused on doing stuff that really makes a difference and not get sidetracked. And when you enjoy it as much as I do, then you found the perfect mix.
Absolutely. Well, Kim, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they?
The easiest way is to go to my website, which is kimrahir.com. And if you want to find out how you're doing, in your everyday health and fitness, you can take a free assessment there, where I'm going to give you some pointers on, where you are at and what you can do next if you want to get stronger. And it's like about how your health and strength fits into your daily life. So it's not about, can you do 5 push-ups? It's more like, how do you tie your shoes, stuff like this. So make it very useful and functional. And then you can just follow me on Facebook or Instagram with my name, Kim Rahir, where I share lots of, tips and tricks and fun stuff. And of course, my weightlifting adventures also. So you can find out more about me there.
Absolutely. Well, Kim, thank you so much for joining us. Really an epic conversation. And congratulations on all the success that you've had.
Thanks, Zander.
And I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And this is exciting. I have a TV show coming out. So if you want to be a guest in studio with me, go to epicbegins.com and look for the TV guest. As always, I want to remind everyone that epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Zander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Zander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.